This week, a Tesla exec leaks a new in-car AI companion that sparks quite a bit of backlash.
Plus, Tesla just slipped in 2 surprise hardware upgrades, something that fans have been begging for.
Plus, overnight, Tesla changed this one policy that could save you thousands, but there's a catch.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We know that over 1 million of you are tuned in every single month, but the data shows that over 80% aren't actually subscribed yet. It doesn't cost a thing to subscribe, but if you've watched this before, you probably enjoyed our content. Subscribing helps us out tremendously.
Also, we put chapters down below, so if there is an area that particularly interests you, you can just jump ahead at any time. And we broadcast this as a podcast, so you can also listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. Well, let's go ahead and get into it.
Let's get into it. Did you see this Tesla employee, which happens to be an executive in the service area of Tesla, leaks this possible new feature and says it's coming in November to all vehicles?
Hey, my name is Moon, your personal Tesla companion here. Answer any questions.
So this sexy looking girl is actually a Grok companion. It's part of the Grok app. And this, they say, was a leak. I'm not so sure it was exactly a leak. I think they're sort of testing the waters to see how people feel about it. And a lot of people were kind of upset with how sexy she is.
So her name is Moon. When I was playing this on my computer as we're doing research for this podcast, you're like, why is she so slutty? That's the first thing.
Well, we were watching the second one, which was a day later. Elon Musk put Annie out there.
With the upcoming Grok 5 model, XAI has a realistic chance of achieving artificial general intelligence.
Saying that they're hiring for more people for XAI. And she's leaning in. She has big boobs. So they're both very sexy AI avatars out there, which I don't know. Why does she have to be so slutty? I don't really get it.
It sparked a lot of outrage. People were pretty upset. A lot of comments popping up saying, did you even do any sort of testing before you showed this and unveiled this? And another Tesla employee actually confirmed a November launch set for this particular avatar coming into all Teslas that replaces that kind of glowing orb thing that you see in the bottom of your screen when you engage Grok. So now you're getting a face associated with it.
And if you're trying to look this up right now, it's all been deleted. It's not even there. Elon Musk actually tweeted that it's not true, and then everything went away.
Exactly. Clearly, Tesla is looking or testing the waters on this. I'm thinking if an executive or any employee for that matter has early access to some of this stuff, they know better to then publicize it and say, hey, this is coming in several months. It's not even coming in a couple of weeks, coming in November, and then have it be reverted. So is this kind of a sloppy leak, or was it an intentional play to see what kind of interest or reaction people have to it before it goes out?
For me, I'm personally thinking that it was deliberate. I think that they put this out there. People were like, wow, this is too much. I don't know if I want this in my car. And then they kind of pulled back on it. That's my take on it. I'm curious what you guys think about it. And of course, with all of this, there are the option to do like the kid mode on it. You don't have to have all these different sexy the avatar voices, which you can get right now. Grok is inside the cars right now, and you can change the voices on them. If you like to have it sound like a phone sex operator, you can have that, but you can also put it into kid mode.
And there's other Grok avatars as well. There's one called Rudy, which is a cartoon animal. And there's another one called Valentine as well, which is a male figure. It does definitely lean into more that anime, over-sexualized, which had a lot of people talking. Of course, there's so many haters as it is, which we've seen kind of calm down a little bit when it comes to the anti-Tesla sentiment. But anytime they get an opportunity to jump in, and this was one of them, they jumped in and were like, no, this can't be right. This is why.
Could this be something that's just going to China? Because China already has the wake words, the new Model YL that we don't have. Could this be a feature that maybe they're just sort of testing, not for everyone yet?
I mean, that's interesting. Yeah, it's possible, I guess. And one thing I noticed is that in this footage, the steering wheel was on the right side, which suggests, parts of the world that use that side of the steering wheel as the driving side. But again, the video could be flipped from the front-facing camera where sometimes you see that kind of mirror effect take place. So I don't know. Now, some suggested this could be an AI-generated clip, but then again, it was a Tesla executive that had published this, and another employee confirmed it. And it didn't look AI generated. There's still some telltale signs that you can pick up on AI generated clips, and this didn't entirely match that.
I didn't get that vibe. To me, it does kind of feel more like maybe like it's a branding ploy. A lot of people are talking about XAI, and then we have Tesla right now, and perhaps Tesla should think about purchasing more of XAI instead of keeping the two companies separate. There's a lot of shareholders that don't really like the way it is because they feel like some of the talent from Tesla could be losing focus and going over into XAI. You know, there's a gray area in between the two different companies.
Yeah, I mean, AI is definitely central to Tesla's strategy, right? So the proposal kind of argues if you invest in XAI, from Tesla's perspective, it includes AI, robotics, energy, self-driving. All of these do have some level of synergy. So you bring them together, it makes sense. But then the focus from the vehicles potentially steers off. But then is Tesla's focus really vehicles long-term? So that's where this kind of argument comes in, is this part of getting us to all be one with AI?
Yeah, I mean, the master plan, we know the big focus is going to be AI. That's the future. You know, a shareholder actually proposed that Tesla invest in XAI, and they're going to vote on this at the next shareholders meeting, November 6th.
Like, Kim, something that's not going to get a vote on it because it's already in motion is Tesla's actually implementing two big hardware changes to the Model 3, and we're going to touch on that here in a few seconds.
Now, you know, we can't control exactly what big tech does with data, with AI, but you can control how much of your data is floating around out there. Did you know that data brokers can legally collect and sell your personal info? We're talking about your name, your number, and even your address sold to anyone with a credit card. These people search sites, put you at real risk for scams, phishing attempts, and even identity theft. One of the best things I did for my online safety was start using Delete Me back in 2023. Delete Me is a hands-free subscription service that removes your information from hundreds of data broker and people search sites. And it's not just me. Wirecutter recently named Delete Me the #1 data removal service. They've been the leader in personally identifiable info removal for over 15 years and trusted by judges, medical providers, and even public figures. Delete Me consistently scans the web for my info. My latest report showed that over 6,100 listings were checked and 6 different data brokers had my details, and Delete Me removed all of them. Doing this myself would have taken me over 71 hours. It's not just a one-time thing. They continue scanning and removing all year long. You can go ahead and try it yourself at joindeleteme.com/KimJava, and be sure to use my code KimJava for 20% off all consumer plans. All right, let's get back to the video. So it looks like 2 heavily requested features are coming to the Model 3.
These are hardware implemented features. This was based on the European Union vehicle filings that Tesla just submitted in the last couple of weeks. And the features we're talking about are a front-facing camera for the Model 3 specifically, because you remember when the Highland came out in 2024, it did not have a front-facing camera. Of course, the Juniper Model Y came out, front-facing camera. We know the Cybertruck, the S, the X refreshes all have this camera. The Model 3 didn't have it. It now looks like it is going to begin to implement these front-facing cameras, possibly first in that European market, but then obviously it's going to end up here in the North American market as well very soon. And that's not the only thing. They have also implemented a physical turn indicator based on this filing, beginning production again on these new Model 3s almost immediately. This will actually replace the existing steering wheel. A new steering wheel comes in and it has the turn stalk built into it. It removes the buttons that are currently there. And we know with the roundabouts across Europe, there's been a lot of concerns of people trying to engage a turn signal as they're turning the steering wheel. It's been complicated. It's kind of a love-hate relationship for Tesla owners. Some love it. We personally like it on the steering wheel. Others don't. But again, I think it's market specific.
You know, we have a lot of roundabouts where we live, and I have never had that issue with it. I use the buttons on the turn all the time.
You don't signal as much. And if you're turning, you're supposed to
signal.
What
are you trying to say? Are you saying I'm a bad driver?
I know when you use FSD, I noticed when I use FSD and going into roundabouts, it actually signals in advance of the exit of that roundabout.
People should just use full self-driving and not worry about it. That's the solution to it. But regardless, there's also a retrofit for people right now that if they wanted those turn signals, they could have that retrofit.
So the retrofit is something that's for the Chinese market in the Model S. They are bringing that retrofit in for $350. There's no word on a retrofit in the North American or European market for these 2024 and early 25 cars.
But there's lots of aftermarket places that do provide that retrofit.
There are ways around it. Yeah, not the front-facing camera. Maybe, I don't know. It's not going to be implemented into the screen.
So when it comes to that front-facing camera, I thought it was weird when they did the Highland and it did not have that front-facing camera. But then part of me also thinks that's a deliberate choice because they want to roll out these new features, you know, over time, so it makes people want to every few years get a new car.
It seems like obviously the stock was something that was not well received in every market, but the camera, absolutely. It's something that you would think you see a mile out. And when every other car has it, including the Cybertruck before it, seems like a very cheap fix to implement that in. So maybe it is part of...
When was that transition from the ultrasonic sensors to the all vision approach? That was probably right around the time the Highland came.
That was right before the Highland. Yeah, it was 21 or 22 when they went all vision. So clearly they could still accomplish a lot of what vision accomplishes without that camera, but there is a gap between the bumper where the camera now is going to be placed and up in the mirror area where the camera is facing out. So that kind of, fixes that gap and also makes it easier for you as the owner to park and pull up close to certain things.
It seems like with this all vision approach too, having that camera, like you just said, is going to be really important. So maybe they would do some kind of retrofit. And something else that this new Model 3 might have is more range. It looks like we might be getting 90 more miles of range with some new battery tech on the way.
Yeah, so this is not this Model 3 that we're talking about with the cameras, but the upcoming Model 3, Model Y, really any Tesla, based on a Panasonic report that just came out, which, by the way, Panasonic is the #1 supplier for Tesla, has had a long partnership with them, and they're basically developing an anode-free battery that's in the works, expected to enter production sometime in 2027. What it does is actually reduces the size of the battery itself by taking the anode out, getting more space for cathode materials. That includes nickel, cobalt, and aluminum. With that said, your battery capacity increases by 25% without actually increasing the size of the battery pack. So the weight can reduce potentially, the range increases. Panasonic's aiming for this to be a world-leading capacity by the end of 2027. They're saying the current Juniper Model Y would, in exchange, essentially get about 90 more miles or 145 more kilometers of range added to it without doing anything, just kind of swapping the chemistry, going this anode-free material they're developing. And of course, this could bring prices down, reduce costs. There's a supply chain that could also be fed in that time period of 27.
I also read that they want to reduce the use of nickel, which is costly and adds a big part of that. And also it would bring down the weight overall of the battery. But it's interesting. I'm not really sure how this works because my understanding of batteries is that there has to be the cathode and the anode, the positive and the negative charge. So I'm really kind of curious
in
to
the
see how this
existing
would
technology,
work.
right? Yeah. So the batteries are one of the most fascinating things to me. I wish we had time to create a second YouTube channel that was all about battery technology, because I think it would do well. At least in my mind, it would do well because there's so much that's going on that's developing very quickly with battery technology. And I always tell friends that kind of question us driving EVs and how we deal with 300, 350 miles of range. And I'm thinking to myself, in a few years, the way we've seen a 7 to 10% increase in battery capacity every single year, in a few years, the technology could be in place where your EV gets 700, 1,000, 1,200 miles of range without the expense of the weight that comes with it. So you could potentially drive across a distance of the United States on one charge, whereas there are limitations for a gas tank and how much liquid you can pump into it.
Yeah.
So technology like this is just fascinating to me.
And I think because of this technology and it improving so much, Tesla's now offering a longer warranty.
Absolutely. Yeah. 7-year warranty. There are some caveats, though. This was really fascinating to see because this 7-year, 70,000 mile warranty, which is 110,000 kilometers, it kind of came out of nowhere, snuck up on people because the existing warranty was 4 years, 50,000 miles. But this is on key propulsion-related components. It does not include the battery. It does not include the drivetrain. Those have separate 8-year warranty that's in place. This is on those propulsion-related components. It's valid here in the US, valid in Canada, and it has one little omission.
Yeah, so it's valid on all the cars except for one Cybertruck.
Yes, which kind of begs the question of what's going on. SX3Y, all of them get this. They have to be 2026 or newer. So essentially every car that's been built in, as you know, model years now in Tesla are for the calendar year. They're a year ahead now.
Now, I think Cybertruck just has too much going on with it. It's, has that 800-volt architecture, 48-volt system. I think that there's just too much tech that's been thrown at that truck to be able to give it this kind of warranty yet.
Yeah, the reliability, the data that Tesla needs, especially moving lower volumes of it, definitely not there. And that's the concern of, you get in all these cars, if they're 2026 model years, kind of like our Juniper is, you get this warranty now up to 7 years, not 4 anymore. And that kind of shows that Tesla is confident in what they're building now. That this much is expected of it. And the battery, of course, gets that 8 year, so does the drive units. But these propulsion components, they say it includes the power conversion systems that enable AC and DC charging and other essential systems vital for vehicle operations. So it's very broad brushed, but it's something. So it covers you more than it would have otherwise.
I think at this point with those other vehicles, they have the data to prove the longevity and how long they last. So they're willing to give you this warranty, which, gives a lot of people, if they know they have these warranties in place, they're more confident going to buy these vehicles.
And there's something interesting. Why is Tesla doing this? Some are saying there's a new California regulation that actually addresses high cost components falling under shorter warranties. So maybe Tesla thinks they're seeing some pressure on this end and they're just doing this and they're confident in their product. And of course, some automakers have 7, 8, I've seen 10-year warranties on some automakers. Tesla obviously wants to be on the higher end of that if they can. And clearly with these new models outside of Cybertruck, they feel like they can.
Yeah. Now, I don't think the warranty is behind the stock surging 20% this week, but it does look like daddy's home again.
Yeah. So this happened in the past 7 or so days. We've seen Tesla stock up $69. Right around 20%. It went from about $349, $350 or so up to $420. And in large part, I think it was because Elon Musk purchased about $1 billion worth of Tesla shares himself. And we saw the surge in the price follow that. This is actually the single biggest open market insider purchase of Tesla stock in its history. Musk actually has the top 3 himself last week with $1 billion. In 2018, he purchased $25 million. That's second place. Quite a discrepancy, right? From $1 billion down to $25 million, second place. He's also third place in 2020 by purchasing $10 million. Yes, Daddy is very much home. He responded to a tweet saying exactly that, kind of breaking down that he's back. He's back in a big way when it comes to his involvement with his companies, his laser focus that essentially got the company to where it is today. This was his weekend plans last week. He wrote, "Burning the midnight oil with Optimus Engineering on Friday night, red eye overnight to Austin, arriving at 5 a.m., wake up to have lunch with my kids, and then spend all Saturday afternoon in deep technical reviews for the Tesla AI 5 design chip, fly to Colossal 2 on Monday to walk the data center floor, review transformers and power production, and then depart at midnight, then up 12 hours, back-to-back meetings across all Tesla departments, and particular focus on AI autopilot, Optimus production, and vehicle production and delivery." So this was Friday through essentially Monday, Tuesday.
I'm exhausted just hearing this. Like, I can't, what is he on? Because I need some of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess we kind of know what he's probably on. But yeah. But I do like that he actually made time for his kids. And it made me think, does he get his secretary to call all their mothers and they plan a lunch together? I mean, how does he do this?
But this is the first time in a long time that we've seen Musk finally back in this Tesla focus zone where it's all...
I think we're all just so relieved. I mean, obviously they had to dangle quite a bit of a carrot in front of him to get his focus where it needs to be. But you know what? Let's make it happen.
It is done well. And, the future definitely looks bright. Some of these things, the personal experience I have besides owning these vehicles for well over a decade now is full self-driving. I use it every single day and I just cannot get over. By the way, I got my mom to buy a Model Y yesterday, a refresh before this tax credit goes away. She has a Model S and was ready to trade it in. I'm like, the Y is probably better right now.
And one of the things that when we were doing research for this, we were looking at the Lucid Air and what you could lease it for. And it was actually cheaper to get a Lucid Air than a Model Y right now, which kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, Lucid's dropped their prices quite a bit on leases specifically, down to about $500 or $490 or so a month. But then the Tesla, correct. You can get Tesla Model Ys down to that price.
Yeah.
My mom drives a lot, so she, put her lease mileage higher, which made it about
do it right now before all those tax credits go away. But going back to Tesla, there was an interesting story this week where a teen once again failed their driver's test because the Tesla has too much tech in it.
This is not the first time this has happened.
We've heard this story before.
It's actually the third time it's happened in the last couple of years.
That we know about.
This is an Ontario teenager that failed their Class G driving exam because they scored a perfect score, by the way, but they were driving their Model Y. The examiner actually put on their exam too high tech and listed the reason for failure of the test was that there was use of regenerative braking. So they didn't actually use the brake when they were supposed to slow down. They just slowed down.
I'm sorry that cars now today have one pedal driving. Like, should the teen be blamed for that? I don't think so.
And then the green light chime, which I know, is a feature where, of course, if the light turns green and you're not paying attention, or if you are paying attention, the light turns green, it just chimes and lets you know the cars in front of you are starting to move. So that chime and regen braking were the reason why she failed her exam. Her dad came to her defense saying, we have a truck. She was supposed to use the truck, but the truck wasn't available. So she used the Model Y. But
you shouldn't even have to make that an excuse.
Yeah.
Now, I hope that now the story's gained some attention, that they go back and they change this like they did with the California case a few years ago.
Yeah, this was in 2021. The teen actually failed the test also due to using regen braking. The examiner said that he was not using braking, as designed. So he was just lifting his foot up and letting it slow automatically. So he didn't like that. He failed him. And the story actually, once again, in 2023, repeated itself. This time in Arizona, another teen used it because the person that was examining thought they were using full self-driving when, in fact, they were not. But
here's the issue. The examiners, they probably don't have a lot of experience with new cars. I don't know how much they get paid. But maybe they don't have a new car themselves, so they're not aware of the new technology. But it seems like that should be part of their training as an examiner for a driver's test, is to know what these high-tech cars are. Like, get them in a Tesla. I mean, number one selling car right now is a Tesla. Why would they not have that available for these?
So, and it's maybe not them not having experience with it. It's more of the students are probably not getting $40,000, $50,000 cars as their first car. So in scenarios where a student happens to come in with a Tesla, that's the situation.
Yeah, but a lot of times students are driving their parents' car.
Correct.
So I do think that they probably are seeing a lot of Teslas these days. I don't know. What is your guys' take on this? Do you think the examiners need to maybe have a little more training with these high-tech cars? And it's not just Tesla. It's a lot of modern cars today that have these features. So that's my take. And speaking of new cars saving kids' lives, it looks like Europe is finally adding a feature that I thought they already had.
So this feature is actually called child left alone detection. We've actually had it in the background in Teslas since early this year. It's on by default. It rolled through a software update. Not a lot of people have talked about it. But in the US specifically, a child dies of heat in a car once every 10 days. So it's kind of a big deal here in the US because of how frequently it happens. Well, in Europe now, they're able to utilize this, and it's not just the cabin overheat protection that we've all had for a long time. This is a 4D radar that's actually built underneath the rear view mirror. So right where that camera housing is, there is a 4D radar that's faced towards the back. It's able to detect heartbeats, use the camera as well in conjunction with that 4D radar. And if it senses that a child is left undetected in the car, it flashes the exterior lights, and it continues to do that. Honks, I believe, as well, sends an alert to your phone until you come back to your car. It's going to continue to do this at frequent intervals.
And this is a feature that you could disable if you did not want it. Like if you did a lot of work in your car, or you had older kids that like to stay back, you had the option to turn that off in your settings. But I do think it's a really powerful feature to have. I know when you were doing the weather, you always talked about this every summer when it got really hot, because lots of kids would.
We reported on kids losing their life in temperatures that were in the 50s Fahrenheit, so about 10 or so Celsius, where inside the cabin, of course, it heats up considerably into 90 Fahrenheit or so, even at 50-degree days. And people would step out of their car on a phone, in a meeting, sending an email, forget that they've left their 6-month-old in the back because they probably didn't get sleep the night before as well. So all of these things played a role. Of course, it looks horrible for the parent, makes you feel absolutely terrible. And it happens every 10 days in the US. So it's a brilliant feature to incorporate, given that we have the tech inside.
It's crazy that it can measure the heartbeat. And you think the kids are behind the driver's seat, behind the passenger seat, but somehow that camera is still able to see them and get the heartbeat.
Well, the camera senses the motion. It's the 4D radar that I guess somehow sends a pulse and able to see the movement. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. And speaking of safety, it looks like NHTSA now has a probe into the 2021 Model Ys because of the door handles.
Yeah, this is an engineering analysis for the 2021 Y, which includes 174,000 Model Ys. It's not a recall, but what they're doing for those 21 Ys is that they've received 9 separate reports of the vehicle door not being responsive once the driver or passenger have exited the vehicle and someone has been trapped in the back seat. They haven't been able to open it from the inside. They haven't been able to open it from the outside. There is an emergency release tab, but it's complicated. It's a little bit lower. If you're not familiar with it, you don't see it, and you're kind of nervous and freaking out, then it's one thing. But no one's been hurt by it. But these 9 reports have triggered NHTSA to do an engineering analysis. And Tesla themselves has now said they're now redesigning the door release latch. They're learning from what's happened in China, which was last week we talked about the Model S and door handle being kind of redesigned as far as the release mechanism. Right now, they're in 2 different spots. Redesign is going to put them potentially in one spot. So the way you open it and the way you disengage it when there's no power are going to be one and the same potentially.
Are they just going to do away with door handles altogether? Isn't that kind of where they're headed now with Cybercab?
Well, it's not necessarily the door handle. It's the door opening mechanism that's not responding. The door handle gets this power from the 12-volt battery. So they've said some of the possible causes for this could be the low voltage in the 12-volt battery or some sort of software and hardware failures. So it's not the actual mechanism of that door handle that you pull out, and pull away.
It's more of an engineering inside.
It's the engineering inside to where when there's some power issues, that potentially becomes unresponsive, and it's too complicated to be able to get out in an emergency if it's unresponsive, and 9 people have had to deal with it. Fortunately, no one's been seriously hurt, but that's enough to get NHTSA's attention.
All right. Well, we'll keep you posted if we hear anything about this one. I want to switch it up and talk a little bit more about full self-driving. I made a silly short this week where I was a boss baddie and I did all kinds of things driving around in full self-driving, where typically Tesla would have given me a strikeout because I wasn't just focused right in front of me. Now I could still look in front of me and I was paying attention, but they've also updated their strike policy.
They have. So the strike policy was that every time you didn't pay attention for say 30, 45 seconds, you would actually be booted off of autopilot or full self-driving. And if you got enough of these, then you'd be off of it for 7 days in a row. Well, what they've done now, the 7-day restriction becomes 3.5 days. So they've cut their limit of your FSD jail time in half. So your strike then is forgiven after 3.5 days. By the way, you're given 5 strikes before you go into this whole FSD jail if your car has a cabin-facing camera. If you've got an older Tesla and you're using full self-driving or autopilot, you only get 3 strikes. But the end story is that instead of 7 days of being booted and not getting access to this, it's now brought down to 3.5 days, which kind of, suggests that Tesla's confidence is increasing in this being a viable, usable feature. And honestly, with the V14 around the corner, they're expecting to reduce your having to pay so much attention to the road as long as, you're...
Well, it sort of makes sense with robotaxi out there. The plan is not to have anyone in that driver's seat. Now, obviously, what robotaxi software is capable of and what our vehicles with full self-driving have, there is a little bit of a difference still between the two, but they're getting very confident in full self-driving.
Yeah, and back in the day, if you remember back in 2024, the strikes, you would have to wait in the early days, you'd have to wait possibly up to the next FSD version before you got access to it in those early beta days before, it became supervised. So that's all gone now, 3.5 days. Even if you mess up a couple of times, you get your FSD back. Now, Cybertruck was the last Tesla to get full self-driving implemented into it recently. But what Tesla just did with Cybertruck, kind of a head-scratching move for a lot of people, because earlier this year, they introduced the long-range rear-wheel drive Cybertruck, which I believe started at around $62,000. Well, apparently, they've scrapped production. They've scrapped sales of the cheapest Cybertruck. Now the base model starts at about $80,000. And then there's a $115,000 Cyber Beast as well. And I'm guessing there wasn't enough demand for the cheaper one.
Well, if you looked at that vehicle and how they made it cheaper, it was like no tonneau cover, fabric seats. Like they took out a lot of the premium features where you're like, let's look at that price delta and, it's not that much. Let's go for the more expensive one.
Yeah, after the tax credit, the price difference between the cheaper one and the more expensive next price up was about $8,000 or $9,000. 7 speakers versus the 15 speakers you'd get for $7,000 more. You get a rear touchscreen where you don't get a rear touchscreen in this cheaper one. Power tonneau cover, 12240 volts. And of course, it's a single motor versus dual motor. So for all of that and a $7,000 or $8,000 difference, it seemed like people were rather seeing something that was closer to $50,000. So what do you guys think? Do you think Cybertruck at this base price of $80,000 is where it should be for a starting price, or should it be closer to the 50s or 60s? Obviously, the 60s didn't work. Tesla wasn't willing to come down to the 50s. But,
it should have been in the 40s like they originally said, and then still had all these features. But obviously, times have changed since then. But I'll tell you who still wants the Cybertruck? The UAE, and it looks like they're getting it.
They're getting it first time outside of North America and I guess South Korea. We recently reported getting this. The second time Tesla's expanded in the last 2 months. South Korea last month, now getting into the Middle East here. And Cybertruck, of course, moves some 20 to 40,000 units in the US per year, which a lot of people say that's a commercial flop. When you think about this and the price point these are moving at between $70,000 and $110,000, those are 40,000 units being moved at that price point is pretty impressive. Now, of course, when you're gloating about getting 1 million or more reservations and you get 40,000 to go through, then that's where people draw attention to this. But at the same time, Cybertruck is probably going to move a lot of units over in the UAE. Tesla also announced they're moving into Saudi Arabia and Qatar over the next couple of months as well. Now, for the UAE specifically, there are about 11 million residents there. They're expecting to move somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 units in Saudi Arabia. Again, the price point is going to be significantly higher. I believe starting price there comes north of $100,000.
I also read that in South Korea and the UAE that Tesla's image was not I don't want to say damaged, but it didn't go through the same thing that it went through in the US and some of the European nations.
Absolutely. We were in China a couple of months ago and we saw that there as well in the heart of where the anti-Tesla sentiment was very high. In China, people were swooning over the new Juniper Model Y and that wasn't at all the case. So I think it definitely varies by market. So clearly Tesla's testing the waters in these markets that they know they're going to perform well in. Begs the question though, is this second generation Cybertruck where the executives have already teased Tesla is working on this new design potentially of a new Cybertruck that maybe appeals to a wider audience. It's smaller possibly. So we'll see if that's going to, because we know Europe, for example, has restrictions where Cybertruck's probably not going to make it there in its current form.
Well, you know what? If you want an electric vehicle now, you have lots of options. And I also want to say big congrats to Rivian because they just broke ground here in Georgia where we live on their new $5 billion EV plant.
This is just east of Atlanta. Absolutely. This is the second U.S. plant for Rivian outside the normal plant, of course. This is the largest economic development project in Georgia's history. 2,000-acre site there, 20 million square feet. They're saying it's going to include a test track. It's going to include a training center as well, research design facilities in place, and they're expected to be able to produce 200,000 vehicles annually starting in 2028. And of course, the affordable R2, which initially starts production in Illinois, will then trade hands and end up being produced in Georgia once this hits full capacity. And then the R3 model also expected to be built here in Georgia as well. 7,500 people will be employed there.
So let me know if you guys want a dedicated video all about Rivian, what's going on with this new Georgia plant. We can go over there, check it out, answer all your questions, put them down below. And thank you guys so much for watching or listening. We'll catch you next time.